Hey, what up everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. A lot of people are making their 10-year anniversary of Eddie Guerrero, his death. Videos today giving their fond memories of being Eddie Guerrero fans and remembering everything that they went down with it. Honestly, I can tell you that as a wrestling fan, one of my biggest regrets is, somewhere around 2003, mostly all of 2004 and the beginning of 2005. I really wasn't watching wrestling. I just got to a point when I just felt that there was more important things in the world, and I just wasn't liking the product, and there was really nothing really keeping me. And one thing leads to another. I just said that if Raw sucks on Monday, I'm not watching anymore, and that led to me, stopping watching wrestling for close to almost 2 years. And there's things during that time that I really did miss, like basically all the run of Evolution, and I really missed the rise of Eddie Guerrero. I would still every once in a while peek onto the dirt sheets to see the rumors that were going down, see if there was anything that intrigued me to start watching again. I was always a fan. I always knew that it was in my blood and it was in my soul of something that I'd watched since I was a kid. So I wouldn't watch, but I would pay attention. If that makes any sense. And I remember that at my work here, they used to have the magazine rack right next to where the time clock was, and so if we got done early, we would head over, we'd start reading some magazines, and we'd wait to clock out to leave at the time we were supposed to leave. But I remember at one point when they had not a flyer, but they had an advertisement in there for No Way Out 2004, which of course would be the Eddie Guerrero versus Brock Lesnar match for the WWE Undisputed Championship, at that time. And I just remember honestly laughing at the fact that Eddie Guerrero was a main event star for WWE, just thinking that they had fallen so far, and because of his size and because of Brock Lesnar's size, there was no chance in the world that he was going to win it. And honestly, I still remember the way I felt to this day, and it's one of those matches, and I look back on it at Eddie, winning the title, beating Brock, even though it was mostly about Goldberg and Brock Lesnar in the match they would have at WrestleMania 20, and that was the setup to get him there. Just thinking that, just like, wow, there was no way in the world the ultimate underdog won that, and it just would have been awesome, to be able to see that live. And even though I didn't get to see it, it wasn't something that really brought me back to wrestling. But I've gone back and I've watched a lot of these big matches, and of course with Eddie, a lot of people always talk about him being one of their favorite guys. I can honestly tell you that Eddie, he never really was one of my favorite guys. I remember watching him on Nitro, and he was a guy that was on the show. He was one of the better mid-cards in my opinion. Like when they ran the whole LWO storyline that was supposed to be, Eddie Guerrero and all of the luchadors, basically saying that they've never got a shot at the WCW Championship, never been able to move up to the main event. And, there was guys in that group like Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio that finally, once they came to WWE, were treated like main stars. And even like when Eddie would leave with the Radicals, they were treated like they were main eventers right off the bat, coming in and going up against the stars of WWE, going up against DX. It was Chris Benoit, it was Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, and Eddie Guerrero, and that was really a bold move. I mean, really, to stand up to WCW and tell them that that they go fuck themselves, and they were going to go work somewhere else, because there were other people in that locker room that wanted to leave, like Conan, like Shane Douglas, that push comes to shove, and Bischoff says if you want to leave, you can leave. They stayed because they weren't 100% sure that WWE was going to bring them in. If they did bring them in, how they were going to use them, how long it was going to last. Eddie's time in WWE, would be short because of the problems that has plagued his career throughout his whole life. Drugs and alcohol, and everybody knows the story about him getting released and then him being a part of Ring of Honor when it started to grow, and then because of these matches and him standing out, be able to say that he was clean, being able to come back to WWE, and from there becoming the World Heavyweight Champion. He wasn't really the guy who main evented WrestleMania 20, but when Chris Benoit won, being able to come out and be a part of that celebration, that was supposed to be the start of a new generation of guys like Eddie, guys like Chris really getting a chance, and being able to just because they weren't, the tallest guys in the locker room or the biggest guys in the locker room, being able to show that wrestling really does matter. And I mean, wrestling is a term that you're not even allowed to use in WWE. You're not allowed to say wrestle, you're not allowed to say wrestling, you're not allowed to, do things like that. That's why it always gets such a big pop from the crowd when the older guys come back and they give their Hall of Fame speech. And they talk about what it was like being a wrestler in the 80s and the 90s and being, not looked at as an actor, a sports entertainer, whatever you want to call it. But I like Eddie. I have great memories of him. He just was never one of my favorite guys, so I hope nobody gets that twisted. But for the people, that were huge Eddie Guerrero fans, I think that he was one of the best guys to ever step into a wrestling ring. I tip my hat to you guys and say that I'm sorry we lost, one of the guys way too young. I still remember the way I felt. I read the news on, WrestlingHeadlines.com probably an hour before the show was live here on the West Coast, that Eddie had passed away in Minnesota, and I honestly felt really bad. And then watching the show and seeing how all of the wrestlers had so much respect for Eddie and how all of them were crushed at the fact that he was gone. I mean, look at Batista. The guy can barely even be out there on the stage, about how close they were. Eddie Guerrero is one of the guys who really helped out Batista with the whole storyline on SmackDown about, he was his friend, but he was about to stab him in the back. And I don't think they ever got to have the payoff on that deal. I remember that I believe Eddie Guerrero's last match was the match that was on SmackDown the week before. He wrestled against Mr. Anderson, well, I guess Mr. Kennedy at the time. He was really having fun on SmackDown. He really was one of the main guys. You think about the SmackDown era, the SmackDown 6 with the world's greatest tag team, the Guerreros, Edge and Rey Mysterio being involved in all of those tag matches that went down, that really made, if you watch the Heyman DVD, put them over, Monday Night Raw, having a better show than they were, even when they didn't have the A-lister guys to go out there and wrestle with those, to have the big, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Brock Lesnar, guys like that kind of deal. But it's been fun. I mean, who knows? I mean, Eddie left us, I believe, after WrestleMania 21. Because of that, they ran the whole storyline with Rey Mysterio, which I think a lot of people would like to forget, and him winning the championship in the main event of WrestleMania. I guess it'd have to be 22. And if you go back and erase anything, I would love Rey Mysterio to be champion, but I wouldn't like it to be because of the fact that Eddie Guerrero had passed away, and he was doing it because of Eddie's spirit, and he could feel him, and that's the reason why he was able to eliminate Triple H from the Royal Rumble and all that BS. Ended up being one of the worst storylines of all time. And then even Rey Mysterio, once he got to the point of being champion, it was almost like they were trying to tear him down and make you think that he was never deserved to be the champion, even though he would go on to win the WWE Championship again in 2011, I think it was, and he held it for like 2 minutes before losing it to John Cena to set up CM Punk coming back. But who knows, where Eddie would have fit in. Stephanie always tells that story about, Eddie coming to her and basically saying that he's going to work hard and he wants to be world champion again, and he's going to show everybody that he can do it and carry the show. So that's the way, you like to think about it, about how it would have played out if he wouldn't have passed away. But I'm sure it's been played out. But if you've ever wanted to hear an in-depth story about Eddie in those last days, the Chavo Guerrero 2-part interview with Chris Jericho. If you like Eddie Guerrero, even if you were a fan of his, I mean, what Chavo says about what he went through, we going with the death of Benoit and the death of Eddie Guerrero, it'll bring you to tears. It's a sad one, man. So hope everybody has a good day. Hope everybody can keep their eyes dry and not shed any tears over Eddie Guerrero. But what a great wrestler. Who knows what would have happened, and the legacy that lives on.